Hi everyone. So I thought today I would focus on the topic of euthanasia and these mercy killings that our Liberal government has introduced. If you look at the history of mercy killings, they began in the war zone. So when people are injured, when people have no chance of survival and there's no hospitals nearby, they kill the people, they kill the soldiers. And even on the cross, the reason that they pull the legs to break them is that because that makes the death faster. So when they say Jesus was put on the cross and not one of his bones was broken, that's because they wanted to prolong his death and they wanted him to suffer as much as possible. It was a very cruel death to begin with, but for somebody like Jesus, who was a rabbi, a teacher, who was respected and loved by many people, it was a cruel death. So too in our society, the US started this euthanasia and then they took it to Germany. I've posted the articles on my Facebook if you want to read up on it from Britannica. And my grandmother used to tell me when I try to explain to people what was happening, they get offended. They don't like to listen. They like to interrupt me. And this is a culture that comes from banking. So they'll say, jump in. Why are you keeping quiet? And, I was brought up to wait until somebody finishes talking and then speak. So there's a lot of different things that have changed in society where they say, I didn't adapt. But their adapting and my adapting is very different. And my grandmother used to tell me that, I used to ask her, why do people abort the children? Why, do these things happen? And she used to say to me, well, the government has introduced this thing that if the child is going to be born deformed or it's going to have a terminal illness and it's going to be hard for the parents to look after their child, instead of them taking the child and putting the child into a psychiatric institution or a home or something like that, some of these parents opt to have the baby aborted before it's even born. And she used to explain to me, she used to show me pictures of how deformed some people were. She used to explain to me some of the illnesses and the costs also involved. Some people couldn't afford to keep people at home. The cost was too much. And I said to her, do they do it to old people also? So she said, no, they don't do it to old people. They only, when you get towards the end of your life, if you have a terminal illness and the family decide that, they're going to pull out the plug, the ventilator that's keeping you alive, then they kill you. So anyway, now we have this euthanasia law here in Canada, and they want to make it like America, where you have two doctors, and then with the consent, the person can decide, okay, I don't want to live anymore because I've got a mental illness or because I'm in too much pain or, whatever it is. And it's very interesting to see how these things are cyclical, because those are the same laws that they had in Germany. They were the same laws that Hitler had. People say Hitler was gay and he allowed the persecution of gay people. So, I don't know, there's lots of books and everything written about Hitler and what he did and how initially even the Catholics supported him. He was born Catholic. And then he got into this ideology that, well, the universe must have existed and belief in the universe and belief in perspective and there's no right and wrong, so it's all about your point of view. And there's a lot of that that's coming in to society now. But I think it's sad that, people are being forced to take medical procedures to do things, and sterilization was the other thing. The Americans started sterilization. So if women wanted to work in certain jobs, in certain industries, in order to perform those jobs, they had to agree to sterilization. They didn't want women to get the time off for maternity leave, to look after their children and all that. And they do sterilization in Africa now. I mean, they did it here in Canada to the Native Americans for sterilization. And they do it to people like me with mental health problems. I mean, my anxiety is low, but it's still anxiety. It's considered a mental health, a disease. And for me, I never grew up with this. I mean, I get frightened. I know I get frightened, especially when they took me to Sunnybrook. I was frightened. I asked them before I went, I said, what are you people going to do to me? She said, we're not going to do anything to you. This is intake. Once we have the assessment, he's going to ask you some questions. Then we'll decide what we're going to do. I said to her, what do you mean? Do you mean you're going to take me and put me in the hospital? She's like, no, just come and have the assessment first, and then we'll take it from there. But that's what they do. I've seen horror stories about what they do to women in Canada, how they erase their memories, how they put them on drugs, all the things that they do. So I was fortunate I had Dr. Ng. When I said no, he said, you don't have to do it. Your anxiety is low, and just because they can't confirm what other people are saying doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. He said, you're fine, Belinda. So, I mean, just look at it. Look at the injustice. And then after that, the police sent me an email saying they're not healthcare professionals. So if they're not healthcare professionals, why did they force me to do that assessment in the first place? They knew I didn't want to do it. I said, I'm not comfortable. That's why I went and I talked to my doctor, and I took all the emails and I gave them to my doctor. It's not fair to me. And all the stuff that the Americans do to us on the phone calls and the emails and the chats, shouting at us, yelling at us, tell us how we should be talking to people, and then saying no aggression. I mean, really? It's not a humane way to treat people. When I phone customer service because my package didn't arrive, I don't tell them I've got cancer, I've got anxiety. I don't sit and cry with them on the phone. I don't use my customer service to vent to people about all my family problems and my health problems and my bankruptcy. I call them and I ask them if they can help me to get my package or fix my product or whatever I need, and then I get off the phone. If I need to vent, I call my friends, or I call a family member, or I call the church. There's lots of churches like Silent Unity where you can call, you can ask somebody to pray with you, you can set up a counseling session. It's not fair to us to say, oh, just take it, accept the venting. But that's the demands that they're making today. And the attitude is, if you don't like it, go. We're paying you. So that's how it is today. That's how they treat you. And it's from the time I came to Canada, I never had a job like this in the call center. I pushed back, even when my managers used to get, like, sometimes for the littlest thing, they used to get upset. And I'd say, what are you getting upset for? I did what you asked me. Then they used to fire me. So that's how they are here. That's just that's the way it is. And then if you're nice, they'll say, oh, she's too sweet. Or if you're not nice, they'll say, oh, she's too aggressive, or she's passive aggressive. So no matter what you do, you can't win. It's really and truly amazing how this world is operating, and what the Jesuits are doing now, supporting blessing of gay marriages in the church and all that. These things are not new. They did it before. Women and men used to wear the heels and the wigs and the makeup and the dress and all that, and then slowly women started fighting for our rights, saying we want to work, we want to travel, we want to vote, we want our own properties. The men controlled everything. We were treated as objects, as people who could not make our own decisions, and that's exactly what they did to me. They said, oh no, she's delusional, she can't make her own decisions. And I said, no, I can make my own decisions. I've traveled on my own for so many years without being chaperoned, without it being called in. They go and talk to people who have nothing to do with me, who don't know me, who are not in my daily life, and then they make the judgment calls. I mean, since when? The things that are happening now for women are very, very disturbing. And what Justin Trudeau voted for, this medical assistance in dying, it's disturbing. The American priests are pushing back, and more power to them, because it should not be allowed. So if a woman doesn't get married and bear children, then she doesn't have any value. Since when? Things changed with Vatican II, and people have to know it. The reason that couples get married is two reasons: to have children and for their relationship between them. Some couples can't have children. Some women can't have children. So what? Our lives are not valuable? I mean, the things that are happening in society today are just disturbing. I don't say anything because, like I said, I'm not in those executive assistant positions anymore. I'm not in that decision-making role. When I worked at TD, I was in that decision-making role. I made the decisions. When I worked as a project coordinator, I made the decisions. I had the decision-making authority. So, when you're working in the call center, you just have to do what you're told. Why do you think men and women commit suicide when they lose their jobs? Because their meaning is in that title. And then once that title is gone, they don't know how to cope. That job is gone, they don't know how to cope. They take their lives. Because if they can't get a job, they don't want to be living on the street or sent into psychiatric care or sent into prison. They rather kill themselves. And I was at TD when that man killed himself. He jumped from the 54th floor. We got a call. He had lost his job, and they had HR had told him in the meeting. He came back from the meeting. He said, I want to go and tell them, and then he jumped, killed himself. So people should think about how they're treating us as employees, what they're doing, what impact it's having on us. Yes, they do have counseling and all that in place, but the day-to-day job, how employees get treated in the day-to-day job, that is what matters, and that is what is important. And all these things that they're bringing in about, oh, if it's too painful, if you can't work, then choose euthanasia. I mean, since when? We're going back to a period of time where the Muslims were respected, where Adolf Hitler was saying, oh, we need that kind, we should have had that kind of religion. Christianity is too soft. You look at all the great artists, you look at all the great songs that have been written, they're all about a love for a woman. And even some of the gay people that become women, they do it because they want that. They want what the woman has, and they can't have it. So it's very interesting what Justin Trudeau is doing to this country. When he came in, everybody had a lot of hope. Not anymore. Not anymore. And for me as a woman, I've seen this country change. It was hard to begin with. Now it's terrible. It's really hard to be a single woman and to be in Canada. No matter how hard you work, you can't come up. No matter what jobs you apply for, you don't get selected. And then they say, oh no, we don't want her to be so aggressive, passive aggressive. I'm not aggressive. I'm fine the way I am. I was always fine the way I am. You see, some of their women are more aggressive than us, but they've always got some criticism to make of me. There's always something. Oh, you like this. Oh, don't use those words. Use these words. Oh, don't dress that way. Dress this way. Oh, don't do that. Do this. No matter what I do, it's not good enough. So if I get a job somewhere else, I'll take it and I'll go. And I've always said that. Why shouldn't I be allowed to be sweet and gentle and kind? Even when I hired Madia, one of the Muslim women that worked with me at TD, she said to me, "Why are they so horrible to you?" I said, "Oh, go ask them. Go ask the executive why they're so horrible to me." She used to sit and cry. I said to her, "Why are you crying?" She said, "Belinda, the way they treat you." I said, "So? I don't have a choice. My country is not in any position for me to go back to it, is it? So they know. So that's why they can treat me however they want." People have to push back. It's not enough to have one or two priests pushing back against MAID. And Justin Trudeau, I see he gave big money to Regis College. That money means nothing. It means nothing. If your heart is not in the right place and you're opting for euthanasia and all this crap, what's the point of giving money to the church? Even all these banks and companies. Pope Francis knows he's not an idiot. He's not an idiot. I hate to see what's going to happen. FEMA camps and all this. I mean, by now, I should have been earning at least 65,000, 70,000 a year, and I know it. I know my worth. It's disgusting to see what's happened to my life in this country, and it's unjustified. If I had done anything wrong, and if I had hurt people or done something criminal, you could understand. But no. Really and truly. Medical assistance in dying is really something. And my grandmother used to tell me, I used to say to her, "Don't the women have a choice?" She says, "Sometimes they don't." She says, "Sometimes the doctors and the nurses guide them and they tell them it's better if you terminate the pregnancy now, before the child is born." So it's not anything new. And people mustn't treat me like I'm stupid and like I'm an idiot, because I'm not. Some of these things were taught to me in my home when I was growing up by the family. And I told my mother, she didn't know. When she came here to Canada, she was asking me, "What is this MAID?" and all that. I told her, I said, "Granny told me what it is." She was so upset. I said to her, "Yeah, they do all these things here, Mom. You can't trust anyone. You have to ask questions and then you have to make your own decision. And if you're not comfortable, you have to push back." That's how it is here. They expect you to know. Abilify and all that. What about all the side effects it would have had on me? I'm not saying that I'm 50, I'm not that old, but I'm not that young. It doesn't mean my right to have a child should be taken away from me. If I had gone on that drug, after a year, I wouldn't have been able to have children. And that's just the reality.